going to talk about cosmic polarity. Um, so this is an antinomy. By polarity I mean something like sickness versus health, good versus bad, near versus far, darkness versus light, positive versus negative. Um, there's this polarity uh, that seems to appear, um, seems to be intrinsic to thought as we tend to pursue it. Like, if you try to think without having some idea of, or making use of some idea of polarity, it's kind of like it's not possible to even think without some sort of scale of value. Um, and and it may be that cosmic polarity is not just a intrinsic feature of thought, but that it's an intrinsic feature of being, of all reality. And this is, this sounds like a simplistic thing, but the thing is that if you look at really abstract and dense, complex philosophical edifices, they end up brushing against this topic and don't know what to say about it. Or I mean, maybe they do, but um, this is a fundamental issue, and um, so one case can be made, say, from a Hegelian perspective, that if you sit there and think coherently, consistently, you'll kind of discover that, um, though from a sort of naive point of view, it's very easy to imagine the world existing without value, without cosmic polarity, that as soon as you reason your way through the world, you attain this perspective shift, and all of a sudden you realize that it's actually value that generates being. It's really like, for those who just enjoy philosophy, it's really fun to see this turnaround that philosophers will do, uh, where you're kind of thinking your way through, and suddenly your perspective shifts, and you realize, oh, it must be the case that the only reason that the world exists at all is because there's a scale of value, sort of against which it can appear. Um, Another thing that happens a lot in philosophy is among philosophers who try to jettison value altogether, is that usually if someone tries to be a pure materialist, they end up importing cosmic polarity without realizing it and without admitting it to themselves. And that's a classic criticism of postmodernism, um, and immoralism. Like an immoralist philosophy will be like, oh, values are they're dumb, or they're just socially constructed. But there seems to be an implicit norm. Without those implicit norms, you're not going to be making an argument at all, uh, or have any motivation to do anything, and in a way you don't appear. So if you're going to rely on the idea of philosophy being really powerful and really important, um, it may be that value, cosmic polarity, is intrinsic somehow. And that's even, of course, if you're taking into account the Kantian transcendental psychology, and so forth, because even pursuing transcendental psychology presupposes value. Um, so anyway, but it nevertheless is thinkable, conceivable, from a distance at least, um, that we're actually small-minded if we imagine that our values are absolute. And so maybe the absolute um, does have all this like structure to it, um, and it escapes our ability to think it, but that doesn't make it not exist. Um, so maybe there are values that sort of aren't polar or whatever, and there are many attempts made to show that. I think that the materialist ones tend to sort of obviously fail. Um, and I mean, I think probably the furthest you can get is to show that philosophy kind of has to fall silent about whether there are absolute values or not. Um, that it can't be known, a kind of skepticism. Um, but I'm not entirely sure actually. And in any case, with these videos, the point is that this is an antinomy that matters, and our current sort of horizon of thinking doesn't have the resources to definitively answer the question. You can really go in depth and feel like you've demonstrated that either sides of this is definitely true, but it's an antinomy. You sort of, the fact that you can do that shows that there's this kind of inherent paradox. So this is another, I think this is the fifth one. This is the fifth antinomy of apocalyptic humanism.